reasonably quickly. The first one is called The Hollywood Bus Stop, and it's a semi-autobiographical piece which is based on 6 years that I spent wandering Hollywood Boulevard and experiencing the dark side of Tinsel Town.
The naked blonde writer. The naked blonde writers. The Naked Blonde Writers Hollywood Bus Stop. The Naked Blonde Writers Hollywood Bus Stop. The dark side of Tinseltown. The dark side. The Naked Blonde Writers Hollywood Bus Stop. The dark side of Tinseltown. The dark side of Tinseltown. Dark side of Tinseltown. Chapter 1. When you are only 22, a 12-hour flight is time enough to meditate on the meaning of your entire life thus far. On that Boeing 747 did I endure while trapped in the sky, a torture of adrenaline coursing through my body, tantalized and terrified by what I had done. I was higher than high. There was no turning back. I was a victim of my own ego. I sat staring through the round window, seeing nothing, while slowly but surely British night went back in time to California day. The smiling air hostesses, like little goddesses in the clouds, disseminated glasses of wine to the holiday-making masses. The Americans say vacation. This was no holiday nor vacation neither. Such a grotesque demonstration of the power my ego had over my soul. In some vague attempt to strategize upon that Virgin Atlantic flight, I did solemnly and silently declare to my innermost self, Cardinal rule number 1, I must not drink alcohol. Cardinal rule number 2, I must not spend money. If I could maintain allegiance to these 2 rules, I might, perhaps, shield myself from total deprivation or whatever else was about to befall me in one of the most infamously dangerous cities in the world. I buried the little girl I once was very deep inside. She would one day be excavated. It was up to the other me, sadomasochistic as she may be, to conquer Los Angeles without my vulnerable side. Impenetrable. That was the way I had to be. And so, to Los Angeles, where the streets are as wide as British dual carriageways, and walking across a street is like a mini expedition, but where the act of walking is only for schizoids and vagabonds. A city in which you are what you drive, meaning I was nothing for almost 6 years. Welcome to the sprawling conglomeration of racial segregation. A city in which every race can be found, but no race merges with another. The Mexicans stay way east, the blacks in South Central or MacArthur Park, and as another stretched limousine carries another millionaire across the Beverly Hills border, never the twain shall meet. A city built on a symmetrical grid, in order that direction requires no thinking. Welcome to Los Angeles, the largest open-air asylum on the face of our planet. An asylum inhabited by the most mercenary, egotistical, and ravenously ambitious cut-throat talent in the cosmos. God knows, when I was 22, Los Angeles was the perfect place for me. My feet touched down upon Los Angeles ground to the gentle chorus of a million crickets. The first thing that got me was the heat, slightly claustrophobic to my British sensibility. LAX smelled of coffee, crocuses, and cleanliness. The sheer size of Los Angeles International Airport dwarfed me from the get-go. I began searching for a sign saying bus stop, while trying to act like I knew what I was doing. Across a vast expanse of road, I saw one. I lit a cigarette and inhaled while reading the signage. Suddenly a loud American voice screamed,
"Don't smoke near my baby."
That was the first thing anybody ever said to me in California. His baby was strapped to him like a bomb, suspended in a backpack. Dad was wearing an LA Raiders baseball cap. I was not really standing close, but I apologized immediately and stubbed out the cigarette. A silver and blue bus stopped alongside me. On it were the words Santa Monica. I had read a guidebook which recommended a cheap hostel in that destination, so I got on the bus and began hesitating and holding up the queue. Americans call it a line. I didn't have a clue what to ask for. I tried to sound confident as I asked the driver for a ticket to Santa Monica. Behind his bulletproof glass compartment, he did not smile, and I could not understand a word he was saying. He had to tell me 3 times to put a quarter in the slot. America and England, wrote George Bernard Shaw, 2 countries divided by the same language. When I sat down, my face was pink with British embarrassment. I glanced surreptitiously at my surroundings and realized that mine was the only white face amidst a bus ram-jammed with black people. Opposite me sat an enormous woman surrounded by plastic bags. Her hair was matted and sun-bleached. Despite the heat, she was wearing a multicolored cardigan which was fraying at the edges, and the most magnanimous smile I have ever seen on public transport. I instinctively smiled back at her and felt immediately less like such a strange fruit.
"Where you going, sister?"
she said, in a voice loud enough for all the bus to hear.
"I don't really know,"
I said.
"Maybe Santa Monica?" "You all alone here, sister?"
she asked. I nodded. 2 women in the next row shook their heads.
"Sister, you crazy?"
she said.
"Yes."
I smiled. The multicolored cardigan woman laughed so hard that the bus seat trembled. I could feel them all oozing dismay at me, an idiotic white English girl with no sense of direction. My new friend shouted,
"Honey, you so young, all by yourself here in L.A. You be careful, you hear me?"
Boldly, I heard myself shout back to her,
"Sorry, but do you know if this bus goes to Hollywood?"
The British have taken modesty to such extremes that asking questions is usually preempted by an apology. My sister looked aghast at me.
"You stay away from Hollywood, sister," she declared. "Hollywood ain't no place for a child like you."
All the bus agreed, so it seemed, for there came various acquiescent murmurs from everyone watching the show. The consensus made me all the more determined to find Hollywood as soon as possible. I was advised to stay in Santa Monica, where it was safer for a child like me. And as the bus came to a stop, my sister pointed at the night.
"We in Santa Monica now,"
she said.
"Well, thank you,"
I said, and waved goodbye as the bus took my brothers and sisters away from me forever. Santa Monica was full of British people, the very type I had abandoned only 15 hours earlier. The Santa Monica hostel was managed by a young, wholesome Ice Cube lookalike called Leroy. He had gentle eyes and a perfectly straight white smile. He asked me to go bowling with him after I had checked in. When I asked about Hollywood, he shook his head and assured me I did not want to go there.
"Hollywood's too nasty for a girl like you,"
he said.
"Let's hang out at the beach instead."
I gave a polite refusal, then went alone into the Santa Monica night with some vague notion of getting myself situated. It was around 8 o'clock. I watched a strange kind of darkness seeping over the world. The stars were more like a Van Gogh impression than a real sky. I later learned that was caused by Los Angeles smog. Nothing looked real, and everything was so big. I found a bench on which to devour a slice of watermelon, my ration for the night, and as perfectly toned, tanned bodies rollerbladed their way through the Santa Monica sands, I reasoned that starvation would make me more attractive in the long run.
Marilyn Monroe used to say, when she was hungry, nothing looks better than a washboard belly.
In my gut, a concoction of fear and hunger ululated bearably. I went back to what was to be my room for the night, locked the door, covered my sweaty, jet-lagged body in a thin, white sheet supplied by the Santa Monica hostel, and stared at the ceiling. I took that white sheet as a trophy, a sort of virgin Hollywood swaddling cloth. I stole it in anticipation of sleeping on the streets. A sheet would save my skin from the dust and shield me from the sun. Perhaps Saint Monica herself was watching over me that first night. Eternal angels are all around, aren't they? Isn't that why it's called Los Angeles? Saint Monica or not, I knew I could not abide for long without a good view of the Hollywood sign. They had described Hollywood as hell on earth, but I did not believe them. I got up from the bed and lay down on the floor like a good stoic. The floor builds character. As the sound of American police car sirens screamed through Santa Monica, I whispered into the darkness.
Happy birthday, Marilyn. Happy birthday, Marilyn.
Made a resolute decision to find the Hollywood sign tomorrow, then concentrated myself into unconsciousness. On the morning of June 2nd, 1994, in the lobby of the Santa Monica hostel, I met a tour guide writing words upon a whiteboard, volleyball and jet ski and other human games. I said, "Excuse me, I need to go to Hollywood. How do I get there, please?" Imagine my horror when this man responded in a broad Scottish accent.
"Oh, no, you don't want to go to Hollywood. Hollywood's bloody awful. We're going to play volleyball on the beach. Why didn't you come with us?"
Leroy came up behind me, adding,
"Hollywood ain't no place for a girl like you."
Elaboration on the evils of Tinseltown ensued, with an air of vitriol so especial to British mentality. I should stay in Santa Monica and chill with the expats, he reckoned.
There's a pub on the promenade called the King's Head where the expats hang out,
he told me. The way he said hang out made me cringe. He had come to California many years ago, but the Celtic accent remained, even though his vocabulary was strictly beach banter. Through his crooked, sun-stained smile, I saw a hideous image of my possible future. A future in which I would hang out for all eternity at the King's Head, dressed in little more than flip-flops. We shall drink together every night to the same monotonous refrain about the weather, effectively doing what we were doing back in Britain, with one essential difference. The sun. We shall prop up the bar at the King's Head with overtanned hands, downing pint after pint of suspiciously chilled beer, and in a grotesquely bleached-out accent, in sentences punctuated by the words man and dude, we shall volley forth an endless supply of vacuous rhetoric about how it is raining and cold in Britain, and ain't we the lucky ones, dude. A shuttle bus went from Venice Beach to Hollywood, and I knew that Venice Beach was within walking distance of the hostel. The bus was due in less than an hour. I could easily make it on foot if I left immediately. In a parking lot of organic vegan restaurants, I was approached by a tall, blonde homosexual carrying an array of plastic bags.
"You all right, honey?"
he asked in a sweet drawl. He was wearing huge orange sunglasses, a tall black top hat, purple bell-bottoms hemmed with tiny silver bells which jingled as he walked, and fluorescent green flip-flops. Across his shoulder he carried an enormous tambourine. I smiled and explained myself.
"I'm just waiting for the shuttle bus to Hollywood."
"That left 10 minutes ago,"
he said. "Are you from England?"
The next bus was not due for another 7 hours. My heart sank. The gay jester smiled.
You don't want to go to Hollywood, honey, he said. Here's my card. Give me a call if you need help. I love your accent. People in Los Angeles are so friendly, I thought.
Catatonic as a chameleon. For 7 hours, I sat on Venice Beach, staring at the waves. I had missed that bus for a reason. I needed 7 hours of introspection. That was why the cosmos had conspired to make me miss the first bus to Hollywood. On Venice Beach that day, I was the freak. I had no pet python, which I kept in a box. I was not juggling 2 chainsaws. I was not displaying my muscles in exchange for applause. I was not predicting the future from a crystal ball, nor was I carving naked women from the sands. On Venice Beach, I was the freak, and every passer-by seemed concerned for my well-being. After the 5th stranger asked, was I okay, I began nodding instead of using words, having realized that an English accent was attracting too many questions for which I had no answers. Slowly but surely, during the course of those 7 hours, my stiff British lips were warming up, thanks to the extroverts of Venice Beach. Such gregarious behaviour would be met with profound disdain in Britain. I felt my inner humanity breathing sighs of the sweetest relief. Perhaps California really was my spiritual home. It is a miracle that British people ever managed to forge friendships in a society so socially awkward. Alcohol is, of course, the great British lubricant, but alcohol had all but killed me, whereas extroversion seemed to suit me like an Oscar surely would. Los Angeles smog obscures the power of UVB rays. I did not grasp the gravity of California's sun on English skin until it was too late. 7 hours later, my shins were the colour of blood, so burned I could barely walk. I hobbled back to the shuttle stop. Night was falling over Venice Beach. The chainsaw juggler was placing the python back inside his box, as tenderly and gently as if he were handling a kitten. My skin would soon peel away, and I, a human snake, would shed the tight British skin, no longer necessary, because British skin would be tantamount to social suicide in this loquacious city where I had not one friend. And finally, the shuttle bus pulled up outside the organic vegan restaurant. I was feeling rather bold by then, and thus I told the driver that he must alert me as soon as the Hollywood sign became visible. I went to sit alone at the back, purposefully not smiling at the other passengers, because I was determined to share the ensuing moment with no one. Any minute now, I would see the word on the hill, the only word that mattered or meant anything to me. And through those gargantuan L.A. streets, the shuttle bus moved along to the never-ending hum of cars and horns and police sirens, through all the dazzling night lights and traffic lights, and the stopping and starting of green to amber to red, and despite all the chaos, I was relaxed and serene. A stunning silence had taken hold of me, the silence of anticipation. The silence of any minute now. Any minute now. And then the bus driver was calling out to me.
There it is, Tracy, ma'am, up there, on the hill. Thank you,
I replied aloud in my new confident voice. I lowered my head and squinted through the windscreen. Up there, way up there. Oh yes, I could see it. The word on the hill, illuminated by monumental flashlights, 9 fine white letters spelling the word which was as wondrous to me as the Sphinx might be.
Hollywood, Hollywood,
Hollywood, Hollywood. A joy like no other swelled in my heart as tears of pride welled up in my eyes. I knew then, for sure, that my grandfather had told me the truth when I was 3 years old, that I was the most wonderful, the most amazing, the most brave and brilliant little girl in the world, and that I could do anything I wanted, because the fairies in the magic world would always look after me, because I was the most magic little girl in the whole wide world. Of all the grown-ups I knew when I was little, only my grandfather told me the truth. Hollywood. Hollywood. I was in Hollywood. If he was looking down on me at that moment, I reckon my grandfather, an ex-coal miner who spent many years in bed with tuberculosis and never left his village, would have been overcome with pride as I gazed up at the Hollywood sign. All little girls should have someone like that to take them through the first 7 years.
All little girls should be told they are beautiful, even if they are not,
said Marilyn Monroe. And if you should happen to be a little girl to whom the grown-ups keep on lying, take these pages into your heart too. I am writing them now, among other reasons. For you, for you.
Twenty 21. Copyright The Naked Blonde Writer.
20. Copyright The Naked Blonde Writer 2021.